here, I just want to start then with just this thing that I always forget to say, which is, you know, stay 200 feet away from the loons and the chicks and the nests. That we are on vacation, but they're really not. They're just trying to survive. And then the DNR, of course, says, you know, make sure you wear your life vest. You know, don't enter in dangerous conditions. Don't go to private lakes without permission. And if you use your good binoculars, that will help keep the loons okay while you're observing them. They said again about using non-lead fishing tackles, so that's a job we need to work on. Not using islands until after July 15th, because that's when all the chicks should be done, hatching. Never make sure you have native vegetation on all shorelines as best as you can, and never fish near loons or nests. Make sure to properly dispose bait and line. Keeping dogs and cats away from loons and nests, and reporting any other unusual loon behavior. I've gotten 2 calls for injured loons already, one on Lake Vermilion and another one on Little Long Lake. So that you know, that helps when people call me or call the DNR. And then of course reporting any harassment. All right, 10, these are just a quick update on 10 of the lakes I was able to see by myself. And that was small, the ice out was really for small lakes on April 25th, and ice out was on larger lakes at May 1st. A reminder that we had a bunch of loon deaths from West Nile virus. There were at least 5 or 6 loon deaths in our area, and I think the DNR may have had up to a dozen. We were only able to collect 3 of the bodies, got them to, thanks to Bill Teft, we got them to, University of Minnesota in St. Paul, and they were confirmed, all 3 of them, West Nile virus. So apparently that goes up and down with just cycles that happens, just like the black fly cycle. So here's a quick one, just a quick of these 10 lakes. And I didn't even include Snowbank. Sorry about that, Vicki. But she's got at least 3 birds on a nest, 3 possible pairs. So Hanson Lake had a bird on a nest. Glacier Pond had a bird on a nest. And this was as of as of June 26th. Miners Lake is not good for nesting right now. Because they don't have any nesting habitat left. So I'm thinking about a platform, an artificial platform for there, and I'd love some people to help me out with that. Shagawa, I got to go in a motorboat, and we found at least 8 territories. Some loons were on a nest. Ed Shave had a loon on a nest, but Les Conrad checked it just yesterday, and there was nothing on the nest and only 1 adult. So those chicks may have been not hatched or failed or something. We'll have to go back and check. Pickerel Lake had a loon on a nest. And Arrowhead Lake has 2 chicks. I just got another report this morning of 2 chicks. And Bailey's Lake in Virginia had 2 chicks, but a couple days ago they only had 1 chick. So you know that 50% of them die within that first summer or the first month of the first summer even. Tofty Lake did have a loon on a nest on June 26th. So those are some of the updates. So that was the Yodel call, which is only done by the males. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we see the sonogram. But just as a kind of a reminder, the whale is coming up next. Let's see if it'll go. There, that's just 1 or 2 notes or 3 notes. That's a contact call. So I am here, where are you? I'm here, where are you? Talking to neighbors or partners on their lake. The whale call is only done by the whale call is done by both of them, and that's a contact call. So it's only 1 note or 2 notes. And it's, you know, to neighbors or folks on the lake, the loons that are on their own lake. the tremolo call, which you hear in flight, is an alarm call and a danger call, as well as a variation of a flight call. So, and the distance can travel a few miles. Actually, there's some of the researchers are saying that it's not quite the 19 miles that was in my article last year. So we'll have to look that up again, but at least a few miles. So it's not just talking to their own lake, but also talking to other lakes. The Yodel sonogram or acoustic structure. So the first part to the left-hand side there is their signature. So when they're doing that Yodel, they are saying exactly what individual they are. Then all the repeats tell them if it's a really low frequency, that they're a big body that's really strong, has lots of muscle, and that you don't want to mess with them. And then the ones, and then if they have a lot of repeats, that means they're going to take it to the max. And 30% of the males will sometimes fight to the death. There was a big, unfortunately, bloody video of them on the East Coast just this summer. So that was kind of, and then they go into this vulture stance. Okay, so first they do the yodeling part, the vocalization part, and then they go into the body posture. So first is the vulture, and then they go into the penguin, you know, where they are just, you know, really fighting. They're grabbing each other's bills, they're grabbing each other's necks, they're going to try to poke right into that heart, vital organs, heart or lungs, and it can last actually on and off for weeks until there's a winner. So females usually negotiate, do some wing rowing and back away, but males, like 14 to 30% of them will fight to the death because they have really good habitat and they don't want to give it up. So that's some of the stuff people may have been seeing this spring. And then there's 5 loon species. So the yellow-billed loon is up there in the left-hand corner. The red-throated loon is smaller. The yellow-billed loon is one of the biggest. Most of these species, including the Pacific loon, which I got to see in the winter this time, which was really exciting. The first time I saw one of those. The red-throated loon will actually come through here in migration, but all of these, the yellow-billed, the red-throated, the Arctic loon on the bottom there, and the Pacific loon, which looks a lot like the Arctic loon, they all mostly nest in Alaska, Canada, and the tundra area. So, but we do have 5 species in North America. The yellow-billed being the biggest, and the common loon being the next biggest. The red-throated and the Pacific and the Arctic one are smaller. The Arctic one is bigger than the Pacific one. And I saw the Pacific one in wintering plumage, so it was very gray. But usually it looks like this Arctic one does. And then there you can see another really interesting thing. See the plumage around the adult? The plumage around the adult in fall, this was taken by Chuck Dayton over on Jasper Lake. The one on the right is a juvenile, already all gray. But the adult on the left is starting to change at the face first. What we see in the winter is that the opposite. Their face is the last thing to come in all dark. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The Midwestern loons and all the loons have a very heavy wing load. They have very dense bones, almost solid bones. And so they're really good underwater, but not so good flying. So their body weight, the researchers have been looking at their body weight and the distance. So if you're a loon in Maine, you actually weigh a lot more than the Midwestern loons who have to go much farther when they migrate. So it's just an interesting, they're not quite sure what that all means, but it's an interesting observation of it. And here's where, you know, the ones on the East Coast just have to go a little bit, to the ocean there, and then they hang out in the ocean areas. They don't breed there. They don't nest there, but they just hang out there all winter, and they don't have very far to go, so it doesn't take them as long. Ours go to the top part of Lake Michigan, rest, eat a bunch of food, a bunch of fish, and then they go to the southern part of Lake Michigan, and then they go all the way down to the Gulf or the East Coast. You can see the other arrow going to the East Coast there on the Atlantic. And some of them have been going to really clean lakes in the southern United States. And that's where I found Lake Jocassee and a couple of researchers that are working there. So I've been there for 3 winters now. It's been really, really a good learning experience. What I always forget to say about this is when they're going down, it's very lazy. They can hang out, they can take a few days, you know, they can take their time. When they're going the opposite and coming up to see us in the spring, it's a race. And they are in right, you see some of them right when there's only 20%, 25% of the lake that's got ice off of it. They'll just come in. So that kind of gives you that. This is one of the wintering loons. So I wanted to just say a couple of things about the wintering ones. Look at how different this one had all gray on the back just a couple of weeks before the picture was taken. But now the back is coming in pretty well. So this is a 3rd year or older bird based on the checks on the back. But the face is just starting to come in. And the only way we can identify these guys is to be out there and see how different they are. We try to pick out a different one, and then we try to do 4 birds a day, at least an hour on each bird. And some of the documentation that we found out, I'm going to read from my sheet a little bit here, is besides they also have, you know, fishing problems with the lead down there. And of course there's no ice, so there's fishing boats on there, not as many as during the summer. But some of the data that's come up over the last 3 winters has been these birds either choose to be, there's another one, and I wish I will get more pictures, but I just have a couple right now. But see how different they look compared to ours? And so some of them are solitary all the time in the winter. Some of them are in groups all the time, and some of them go back and forth. They're solitary sometimes, and they're in a group other times. So what we try to do is compare how much they're in a group, how much they're solitary, and how many of them really share. So Jay Mager has more of that data, which maybe I can share next time. The other thing we really do is we compare their dive times under the water with their resting times on top of the surface, where they're preening and resting and things like that. So we're taking the solitary ones and comparing them to the group ones, comparing them to the ones that do both. And we found, as you might expect, that the ones that are solitary most of the time, they have a lot of dive time. Long dives, deep dives, a lot of time under the water, not very much time resting or preening. And the ones that are in groups usually have group foraging, where they work like sharks, going at their prey and going underneath, finding a bait ball, and then bringing that bait ball up to the surface. So that's really interesting. So we, it's hard to get pictures of that, but that's what they're doing. They're making, like sharks do, kind of a bait, getting bait to come to the top, and then they're all just going like crazy and eating, you know, one every couple of seconds of that little bait. So that's the some of the winter stuff. And we are doing more stuff like what are the advantages and disadvantages of being in a group or being solitary. And then also these, you can see how nice that lake is right now. It's just very calm. Sometimes it's very windy, but it's way better than being on the ocean. So why did these particular loons stop and hang out? This lake wasn't even a lake in 1972. So it was only built in 1973 and 74. So most of these loons had to go all the way to the ocean before that, unless they were on another southern lake. So it's interesting because the ocean is so much more difficult, more waves, more nets, sharks, muddy, turbid water and things like that. So, and they hunt by sight, so it's very hard to see. So they have mostly solid bones, so they're really heavy. This is a great idea. This is a great picture of the submarine. And they can have just their eyes or just their nostrils and get a breath. So when you don't see them, they could be really submarining away from you. And there's a chick preening. This is, of course, a juvenile that's already more than 8 weeks old, probably closer to 10 or 12 weeks old. There it is again. But this is what a winter bird can look like too. In the beginning of the winter, before they start changing their plumage, all of November, December, January, and into February, they can look like this, very gray. So we can't tell them apart. And then if anybody can find some more good pictures under the water, this is a good one. They really are like a torpedo. Look at where those legs are in the very, very tail end. And that's where they're doing all the steering and propulsion and turning propulsion. They're doing most all of it with their feet, and they're just a torpedo. If they're doing this near your canoe, they are not very happy. If they're vocalizing near your canoe or kayak or your boat, or if they're doing this underwater, they are checking kind of things out. You might want to back away from that. This is what they'll do, males and females, a wing row to chase each other around in the spring. And like I said, the females usually don't go into a bloody fight like the males, like some of the males do, but they will back away. And this is the way they wing row to get away from each other or to chase each other. So that's called a wing row. And again, these are photographers from Loon Watch. So I also want to thank them and the Biodiversity Research Institute. It takes them a quarter of a mile to get up because they're wing load. This is someone that was already banded. I think this could have been a juvenile over on the East Coast. Again, the plumage changing, the dots start to disappear and they get more of the gray. You can see that. Another one of Chuck's pictures. And then the wing stretch is usually done at the very end of the preening, the wing stretch. That kind of lets you know they're almost done with preening. Those are chicks on the top and an adult on the bottom. They've got that oil gland way in the back, and it's a waterproof thing. If they can't do that, then they're going to die of hypothermia. They have to do preening. You see preening, a small 5 or 10 minute preening session at least once an hour. And once a day, they'll do a wild bathing under the water, on top of the water, whacking their wings really hard. So if you see that, some people mistake it that they're tangled in fishing line. So you're going to have to, take a closer look with the binoculars. Anyway, this one does not have a leg band. If you ever see leg bands, please report it. How do you get the oil on the back of your head? By doing this. And those chicks are younger. That's more like about 4 weeks, 5-week-old chicks. The bill is longer, but they still have that second layer of down. Then this is an example of some of the down underneath. They have at least 4 leg bands, 2 on each. Nobody's died because of a leg band. That silver one is their Social Security number from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I think that's a good example of seeing their leg bands, as well as they do take that leg, I'm sure you've seen that, and stick it under the wings to kind of warm up that blood. And if in July they're shaking that leg, they're doing that foot waggle a lot, and that's to kind of cool their blood down. Then they might do this kind of a wing stretch with a shake at the end of preening. And where do they sleep? On the water, not like mergansers, not like the other ducks. They will not sleep on the rocks, on the land, anywhere. They're only on land for that 26, 27 to 30 days on the nest. That's the only time they're ever on land. So yeah, if you're sleeping like this, how do you keep track of your kids? I'm not sure. Loons do not mate for life. They disproved this in '93 with David Evers and James Peruke at Sini Wildlife Center, which I was able to be at for a couple of weeks that summer. That was amazing. This is thank you to Judy Krish. This is on Burnside. This was their second nest, so they only laid one egg. And in fact, the jet ski came and washed that off. So they have not nested there in the last 5 years, which is sad. Burnside actually has had less than 10 chicks, more like 2 chicks, 3 chicks, 4 chicks per year on the last 10 years. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but their chick number is really low. This is the defensive posture. Male and female both spend 50% of the time on the nest, and they will do this. That means get off, get away from me, you're way too close. Otherwise, they're gonna go in the water and knock the egg in the water, and that will be the end of that. Thank you to Ken Hupala for that nice picture. And then when they get on the nest and it's their turn, they will turn the egg. That's one of the first things they'll do. And they're very awkward. It's very difficult to stand with your legs way on the back like that. So they don't really walk around. This is from Wisconsin during a black fly. Parts of Wisconsin and southern Minnesota did have black fly infestation. We lucked out because we had hardly any rain. I think that's why the black flies didn't show up, although we had a lot of hot weather, not very much rain. But loons will leave the nest. They will abandon all eggs if this is just really irritating to them. And apparently those particular species of flies only like loon smelling oil and black and white decoys. So that's what one graduate student was able to find out. Why do they re-nest? Because it was flooded, or because somebody ate the egg, or something like that. And you can see a variety of different places. We should never do a loon platform without an eagle guard, and I'll show you some pictures of those. I received some better pictures of those. And if the water level goes up and down, that's another thing. There's some places on Fall Lake and White Iron and places that have water level problems. Just look at where loons used to be in the light gray. Northern California used to have loons. Oregon used to have loons. Idaho. Wyoming is trying to hang on to a few. They're struggling. Northern Iowa used to have loons. Chicago used to have loons. Ohio, parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, most of New York, even a little. So, it's just amazing. They have retreated so much, and we are going to try to do everything we can to hang on to. Minnesota still has almost 12,000, and so we are the highest in the lower 48. They have to be close to the water because they can't walk on land. 6 inches, I mean, look at how close that is, 6 to 12 inches from the water level. So they are very, very susceptible to nesting being failed due to water level changes, either by people or flooding or whatever. This is a new thing I just got from 1996 all the way to 2019. This is, I thought, really interesting. Look at the eagle predators there. From 96 to 2010, not that much. Trauma was worse, lead was worse, unknown was worse. But from 2011 to 2019, look at the eagle population that has been. So if you jump over, the third column is all about totals, but the last column is the percentage. So if you take that, eagles are now taking, from all the deaths, the 60 dead bodies that they did necropsies on, 30% of them were bald eagle kills. 20% were trauma, 17% were lead, and that's for sure a killer within a week or two. And then 12 of them were unknown, so we don't know how many of those might have been trauma, lead, or bald eagle. But maybe there wasn't enough tissue, so they couldn't make a prediction on that. There's one of the one of the platforms we should use. Here's some more examples. It doesn't have to be it should be tall enough where they can see predators, but the eagles can't get in from the top. And usually eagles come in from the top. We should not put a platform out unless we're gonna have something like this. And there's lots. You can look up Eric Hansen, Bill Hansen, and these people from Biodiversity Research Institute to get, there's lots of different ways of doing it. Make sure you have a ramp. They say the wooden stuff is better. Camouflage and getting some shade up there with plants or some kind of material is a really good idea. So we can talk about that some more in detail with people that are interested. There again, only 2 eggs or less. If they're inexperienced, it might only be 1 egg. If they're late or a second nest, they might only be 1 egg. If they don't have enough nutrition, it might only be 1 egg. So how many days on the nest? 26 to 30 days. They take turns every 2 hours to 4 hours to 6 hours, depending on the weather and stuff. And how long before the chicks can fly? About 12 weeks. Again, this one was in Wisconsin, and there's not much camouflage there. I mean, they can see it. How long will they wait for that second egg? 24 hours, 1 to 2 days max. And then they leave that nest and never go back to it. Now, interestingly, some of those other loon species actually reuse the nest some for sleeping. So I never knew that. Our common loon doesn't do that, but some of the other loon species, there's been some sightings of that. So anyway, 1 day, 24 hours, 1 to 2 days at most, and then they'll abandon that egg because it's not any good. How often do they ride on the back? 1 week, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. That's about it. Not so much once there's 3 weeks. And how does it help them? Helps them with conservation of energy, warmth, because they don't have any preening. You know, they can't preen or have a preening gland yet, or the right kind of feathers. And certainly keeping away from snapping turtles. A lot of those first week old, second week old chicks are getting caught by, you know, muskie and pike, northern, even a big bass, snapping turtles, stuff like that. And then appropriate size of prey. So what's the story with this adult? I'm not sure if they're inexperienced. They look kind of surprised. Anyway, that chick is not going to be eaten. So this could take 10 minutes, and then the chick will give up, and then the adult will just eat the chick. I mean, we'll eat the fish, not the chick. We'll eat the fish by its, you know, itself. So this does happen. I've seen this happen where they just, it could be the lake doesn't have a smaller amount, you know, a smaller size of prey. So that could be a problem, or perhaps, you know, they're inexperienced, but eventually the chick gives up and the adult will eat the prey species. That's much better. These chicks are only like a week old, you know, tiny beak, darker feathers. That's for their first. And who gets the most food? You know, like we say, your brother's had enough or your sister's eaten enough, it's your turn. Loons don't do that. They just kept feeding. If there's not enough food and one is really aggressive, then one will just die. The one that's least aggressive will die because there's not enough food. And then they have been fed as many times as I've seen them do 2 chicks for a 4-hour period 148 times. And no, they don't necessarily get equal amounts. It's who's ever aggressive. And then it also depends on what kind of food there is. They're going to need much more food if it's all crayfish. They need that high protein kind of fish. And then it's never done in pieces. It's never ripped apart like an eagle does. It's always head first because of that dorsal fin, and it's always whole. And that bill has a lot of dexterity to be a weapon at 1 minute and a gentle spoon to feed their babies another minute. That's another crayfish there. This is a chick a little bit bigger than 4 weeks, probably 5 or 6 weeks. That adult has got a squared off head. That means they're very alert of somebody close to them. There's a foot waggle from a chick. And there's another one close up. This is lighter. This is their second a layer of downy. So that's why I'm saying, 5 weeks, 6 weeks old before they start into getting the gray, which is closer to the 8 weeks old. These are very young again. I would say a couple weeks here. You can see, and the adults have squared off heads. Both male and female can do a squared off head. That just means they're in an alert behavior state. If it's a smooth head, then that means they're very relaxed. So you can know that. There's some of those juveniles closer to 8 weeks or 9 weeks old already. The longer beak, very gray. So they're done with all that chick downy kind, and they're preening, scooting over. You can see their belly is all light underneath because that helps from predators underneath, and dark on top. Fish do that as well, kind of sometimes a lighter belly and a darker on the back. So there's a chick again, getting some food. When do they go on their own? Anybody with children knows that some of your children have gotten really independent, when they're 2 years old or 5 years old. The same thing happens with these guys. I've seen little chicks that are only like 2 and 3 weeks old trying to die with the parents, trying to die, and staying under for longer than I thought they could, longer than a few seconds, like on day one. But other juveniles are off. Juveniles like this might be off hunting on their own. Other juveniles are still begging from the parents. So it might be a personality thing. This is another one from Jasper Lake. This juvenile is trying to leave those chick feathers, those little chick downy off the head, and it's going to that juvenile nice thing on the back there, those gray feathers getting ready. Do they stay together? No, they do not stay together. Our males, our adult males, leave our area on end of September, and the adult females leave our area beginning of October. Now, if they don't have any chicks, they can leave in August. They can leave early, but they do not stay together. The chicks are left alone in October, possibly November, maybe even part of December. They have to eat a lot and really get strong and get those flight feathers in. Half their life is in salt water, so they have to squish some of that salt out of their nares or those little breathing holes on the top of their bill. But they look very gray, white neck, white under the chin, white on their belly, but pretty much very gray and dull looking. They have a lot of predators and nets and boats out there in the winter. Can you tell between an adult or a juvenile? There's only a couple researchers that can kind of tell the difference. They're all very gray until they start going back to their breeding plumage. And our loons won't get their breeding plumage until they're 2.5 or 3 years old. So they won't even come back to us until around 3, and they don't usually nest until they're almost 6. They're only flightless once during the winter. So February, right around end of January, February, or part of February, a little bit of March, only for about a few weeks in there, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe in the winter. Here's the mortality. Mercury poisoning, of course, bioaccumulates, habitat loss, too many cabins, so there's no shoreline, then they'll leave that lake. Type E botulism, I don't have pictures of that yet, but I'm trying to get those from a couple of the researchers. And that happened in Lake Michigan. So we lost something like 10,000 loons in 3 years. It was right around 2013. So I'll get some more documentation for you on that. Lead poisoning, even getting tangled in the line. Oil spills, of course, human disturbance, even, an innocent canoeist getting too close, and flooded nests and water levels. See the way the legs are way at the back? Bill Tech, this was a dead loon from Kevin Keno's USGS transmitter. You can see the transmitter there, and the 4 leg bands, one that has the numbers on. But this was an adult loon. He had a few years that he could do adult loons, and that's why we know where our loons go. where our Midwestern, and Kevin was in charge of Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So he was able to give us those nice maps, and also able to find out about the deaths of botulism on Lake Superior, because on their leg bands, there also was a geolocator on some of them. So that's how he knew it was an invasive species that was being eaten by goldfish, and then all the loons were being eaten, all the loons were being eaten by, were being infected by the botulism that the goldfish had. So, and then there we are, it's a night capture, and I can talk about that some more if people have questions about how we do it at night. They're taking measurements to make sure the band is, they're checking the temperature, see the skin in between those big toes. I mean, it's a big, huge foot, and it's very vascular. And then they're checking the, the feet again. You got to hold it really still. We have a towel over the head. And this was Jay Nager and James Peruk, two of the top researchers. And you got to get the right kind of leg band. And then their leg, put your two fingers together, because their leg is not round like your fingers. It is oval. And so that oval shape, you got to get a band that's going to fit them. And they put those bands on once the chicks are really, well, on a capture night like this, but also once the chicks are big enough and their legs are a big enough size. They never put them on too early. And there's usually 3 of the bands are usually colored and very lightweight, and the other band is the silver one. That's which is the hardest one right there. They're trying to get it into that oval shape, and that's the Fish and Wildlife Identification Band. And that was at Lake Jocassee. This was not last summer, not last winter, but the winter before, when we were doing that. Oh no, it was a March of 18, there it is. And then just making sure, it took us about 4 people to do the capture and the holding and the writing stuff down in 25 minutes. We want to get that bird right. That was a male, weighed about 11 pounds, and was doing a yodel in the beginning, but within a minute totally calmed down. So that was good. And then they're going to release it back in the water, make sure. Oh, they do cut a little bit of the tail feathers. In the winter, they do not take any blood because it's too hard on the animal. They only take blood in the summertime. So there's the 2 of the researchers that started some of this winter stuff. And then this is some summer research. They're looking for flight feathers again to see how those are going along. They're taking blood. That's only in the summer when they do that. Those are from Wisconsin. And here's a social raft. Now, when you guys see this on Basswood or Burnside or up in the Boundary Waters, and they're supposed to be having their nest and stuff, these are ones that don't have a nest. So they're singles. They're either too young, they're 3 years old, 4, 5, 6. They haven't gotten a territory yet, or they could be older ones in their teens or 20s. The oldest loon, I think, is 29 to 30 years old. That we know about, that had a leg band, so we knew when they were hatched as a chick. So that's, if we see these in the summer, those are usually ones that are not, and we don't know who's in there. Are they old friends? Are they relatives? Are they old girlfriends, old boyfriends? I don't know. It's here's one of the feeding frenzies, and at one point we could do a video of it, but I don't know if it's gonna. And then here, can you see the dark head on this one? I don't know if I can get that back. Here's a bunch of gulls that are going over the top. This was a bait ball that a whole bunch of loons that were in groups. They were group foraging. They brought that bait ball up, and there were just fish flying all over. Little baby fish, little feeder fish, and then the gulls came in to try to, take some of them that were, and then the loons were just eating them like crazy. And then they calm down and they do this resting preening. So this is a social group in the summer, and this was 2018. And they were almost all gray, except you see that dark head already? That was one of the first, it's the one kind of in the middle near the the dead tree or the middle of the rock area. Anyway, that's going to be the older one. And then this one, I don't know if we can do a, no, I guess it didn't do, I can't get it to do a, anyway, that was a video of it. I'll have to work on that next time. Anyway, and then there's this is updated. Of course, one of the best science books is the first one. Dr. Judith McIntyre was the first loon scientist that kind of, her first book is the sort of the Bible to all these other young guys that came in later. Dr. David Evers and his wife, Kate Taylor, two of the best books, Call of the Loon and Journey of the Loon, and they just have a new one that's coming out this year, so you can look that one up. And then Stan Tekala did Fascinating Loons with consult from James Peruk. Biodiversity Research Institute is top in the country, in fact, in the world, on loon and bird research worldwide. Jay Mager, that's John Mager, is just won a big award last year from the Ornithology Union. And then Loon Watch, Erica I send you guys a lot of stuff about Erica. She has great monthly updates and helps with loon education and helping all those loon rangers. I don't know, they have like 400 or 500 loon rangers in Wisconsin checking those lakes. And James Peruk, he's working on a book right now, so he wasn't helping us this winter, but he'll probably come back. Kevin Kino is retired, but he's still doing some consult work with USGS. And then you have some more people that have done work in Wisconsin for a long time. Carol Henderson near the bottom there, that's he's now helping with the National Loon Center in Cross Lake, Minnesota. So that's where he's helping out. I think he's on the board there. And then there's Andrews. If anybody has not chosen a lake yet, you are not too late. We'd love for you to choose a lake, and that's the email. And you can also send me an email if you want to know some more information. I think I'm done. Are we ready for some questions?
I've got one. I'll give you my voice here, Sherry.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
This is Steve. I'm always interested in how long loons can stay underwater. And,
yes.
And you were talking about different bodied loons and loons that have to do more diving. What's yes. the average diving time, and does it vary between other kind of groups of loons?
Yes, it does. That was one of the things that our research has shown. And I know the guys are working on right now they just have a couple of pages, but they have more data to compile as we do this. They want to get enough samples so that it becomes more reliable and verifiable and all that. But yes, I can answer that. The loons that we saw doing the longest dives for time, the longest time, were solitary loons that spent most of their day alone. They were doing 3 minutes and some seconds, 4 minutes. Those were the biggest, and they were doing 3 minutes often, and 4 minutes several times. It was just amazing. That's one of the biggest things we could tell while we were on the boat every day. And then the ones that were in group, they were doing a lot of, for those group foraging times, they were doing a lot of 1 second dive, 2 second dive, 3 second dive, because all the fish were up at the surface. And then when they were not doing a group foraging, not doing a shark attack sort of thing, then they were doing 30-second dives, a minute dive, a minute and a half dive. You see, kind of sometimes a 2-minute dive. So does that help? There was a big difference between the solitary ones and how much they were under the water, and the group ones that hung out in a group. The other thing that I can tell you about the winter stuff, which is really fun, is they discovered that some of those loons, and we banded them, some of them went back to the same part of the lake. So this lake is like 9,000 acres, but it's got 4 rivers going into it and 16 waterfalls. So it's really clear. It's stocked with 33,000 fish every year or something like that. Anyway, and they found that the horse pasture that used to be a horse pasture, so it's called the horse pastures part of the lake, there's a group that always hangs out there. And then there's the Thompson Creek group. And they found that, and they didn't know that until they could start to band them. So then they knew, oh, that's so-and-so from the Thompson group. And occasionally they found one that moves back and forth. But they have definitely found that, you know, we know that they tend to have a territory or a lake area, like within 10 miles. So if they can't get on Snowbank this year, they might get on one really close. Or if they can't get on, you know, Shagawa this year, they might try something else really close to it. But that's interesting that some of them, we can't say all of them yet, but some of them definitely have a territory in the winter. They don't guard it, but they have a group there they hang out with. Aren't you curious? What kind of, who are they hanging out with in the winter? we know who we hang out with in the winter, but who do they hang out with in the winter? Do you have, I should read the question too. Do you have any data on how the Deepwater Horizon spill has affected loons? Has Minnesota benefited from funds of the BP was supposed to, well, you know how this goes. First of all, it was supposed to be millions and millions, and then it was cut in half, and then it was cut again. The last time Carol Henderson gave us an update, some of the money is supposed to go for Minnesota because Carol Henderson and a bunch of his people from DNR got some help from David Evers of Biodiversity Research Institute, and they did put in on the Federal Register, and a bunch of us put comments on the Federal Register during that time. So Minnesota did get some money. I don't know how much Wisconsin and Michigan got, but it was not as much as Minnesota if they got anything. So you have to have the right kind of people doing the right kind of stuff at the right time to get some of that money. And I don't know how much of it is going to the Loon Center in Cross Lake, but some of it is supposed to go for lead, like get the lead out program here in Minnesota. So I just say, you know, everybody encourage that as much as you can. And I think that's what we need to keep encouraging the DNR too, because to get the lead out, to do some exchanges, because some of our lakes on the East Coast and in the Midwest, some of the lakes have up to 40% of the deaths are lead poisoning. Now that is something we can do something about. We can't always, you know, get in the face of an eagle, but we can, you know, do something about lead poisoning. So that's something people could do. And the data, actually, we're still doing the data right now. So as many people as possible, I think there's 2 sets of data in, there's a lot of data going on in Wisconsin because they can tell you how many loons they had 40 years ago compared to now. So that's all in the Loon Watch program at Northland College in Ashland, Wisconsin. Minnesota has also done something for 40 years. It's not the Loon Watcher program that I'm doing here, but it is statewide. They also have a loon monitoring program, and I need to get some maps about that. But it's 6 areas that were chosen 40 years ago by Eric Hansen, who's now on the East Coast, and I think it was one of his grad degrees he was working on. Anyway, they worked together with a bunch of people, and they chose 600 lakes. So it's 6 areas, and each lake has 100. Each area has 100 lakes. So that's really good. 600 lakes being monitored for 40 years. So we should, if the BP oil spill was in 2010 and it's now 2020, all those 10-year-old loons that died would not be coming back to us. So we'll have to see if population in Burnside and Shagawa and all your lakes, you know, keep going down, then we know that was a big difference. So we're not done. We're still working on that deep water oil spill documentation of what our loon population look like. Does that make sense? And that's why I'm trying to get more people to do some lakes around here, just as an additional thing. But the Minnesota DNR did come back and reinstate this, because my friend Erica went over and talked to those guys in Brainerd.
You talked about jet skis. I'm curious your experience with the lakes that quote unquote allow versus those that don't, and the damage that jet skis have done and what people can do about it from a state perspective.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And I think that's going to be a hard question, because it's going to bang up against all those people that their main goal is recreation, not keeping the habitat in a good, healthy. That's going to have to be done by lake association by lake association. I do know that some people in Wisconsin have had Bass Lake in Wisconsin, Boot Lake in Wisconsin, and some other Wheeler Lake, a bunch of the ones near the 14 lakes that I do in Wisconsin, they have had chicks and adults killed by jet skis, particularly Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July weekend, really heavy things like that. What they've done, what some of the Loon Rangers have done, is they run out and, you know, try to collect the injured animal. Obviously, if it's dead, you can't do anything, but you can record it and report it. And then, you know, I think two things, well, probably we need to work with the DNR to see if they can push it more. We need to work with our lake associations to push it more. And these are just my opinions. There may be other people that have better ideas. And then I think the other thing is to document it, to document that it happens. Get their license number, or what, you know, who's got the most jet skis on your lake, perhaps, unless you're on a really big lake, you might not know. But and reporting it, just reporting it, and say, and trying to educate those people to say, you know, why don't you do the jet skis later in the season when the juveniles can get away? The hardest time is right now. There's chicks on the water, and the adults will not leave the chicks. So if a jet, stay with the chicks, and they've even had times where two chicks, one chick was hit, one chick was not. The parents were so traumatized, they abandoned the other chick. So both chicks died because one chick was hit. So there's another example. I know specific examples of that. They rescue the chick, they brought it to rehab because they have a really good rehab place, Marge Gibson in Wisconsin, and that vet there, they do a really good job. And then they've been able, because I told you that loons cannot smell which chick is theirs, and they cannot count how many chicks they have. So they occasionally will adopt one from another. That happened on Birch Lake. Remember all those Ely Field naturalists? There was one on the west side, one on the east side, and they were so excited because they both had chicks, and they both had two chicks, and they were so happy. And then in the middle of the night, there was all this yodeling and tremolo vocalizations, and sure enough, next morning, one family had 3 chicks, and I know that's going to be too hard to feed, and one family had 1 chick. So the thing is, they can get, if another family only has 1 chick, the same age, it has to be the same age, then that family will adopt. It's like they can't count. So they will just adopt one, but it has to be the same age chick. And so they had success last year. Last year, Boot Lake had somebody hit, and they were able to rehab it. They couldn't reintroduce it again because those adults wouldn't accept it because they didn't have any other chicks. So they couldn't accept it. It's like they forgot. But another family they were able to find another family, and it did succeed. So there's things we can do. And then I will add one more thing, and then I'll stop, is if you look up Laurentian, let's see, here it is, Laurentian Environmental Center. If you look up their website, in Brit, Laurentian Environmental Center, they have been doing little YouTubes on nature stuff. So we did a very short one on loons, but they have other short ones. So if you have grandkids or you want to learn about something else, they've got some, they would love to have some more hits on their little YouTubes. So you can go to their website and subscribe to some of their YouTubes. because they're doing it on edibles and composting and reptiles and amphibians, all different kinds of stuff. So, and lake ecology, I'm hoping to do another one on lake ecology with them. So